Okay, welcome everyone. Today is September 8th, 2020. This is the regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment of the City of Asbury Park. Chris, will you please call us to order?
I'd be happy to. The following meeting is being conducted by electronic means in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, amended 2020, which explicitly permits a public body to conduct meetings electronically during a state of emergency. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and the Asbury Park Press. All notices are on file with the board's secretary. In addition, a notice regarding the virtual meeting and instructions were published in the Asbury Park Press and the City of Asbury Park website. A copy of that notice is on file with the board secretary as well. The notices on the conduct of this meeting are in accordance with the guidelines for virtual meetings issued by the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Please note, all microphones of public users are muted until the public question and comment sessions. When the public question or comment session is open, you must raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button on a computer or dialing *9 on a telephone. When it is your turn to speak, your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number will be called. Your microphone will then be unmuted. If at any time during your question you are deemed to be out of line or topic, we reserve the right to mute your microphone and will make an announcement that this has occurred. Please turn off all cell phones and electronic devices during the meeting. If you have background noise at the time during the meeting, please mute yourself. Please identify yourself before you speak at all times, as some attendees are attending by telephone only. This meeting is recorded and will be available to view via APTV. Irina, roll call.
Thank you. Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Just 1 moment. All right. Christopher Avalone.
Here.
Russell Lewis.
Here.
Christopher Gonzalez.
Here.
Brittany Ashman.
Here.
Daniel Harris.
You may want to call him, Irina.
Okay, we'll give him a call. He is not present, just for the record. And Jill Potter is also absent for the record. Tim Slick.
Here.
Catherine Minervini.
Here.
And Bonnie Natch.
Here.
Thank you.
So let's hold off and see if we can get Mr. Harris.
Yes, just 1 second.
He may have forgotten about the meeting.
No, I just spoke to him earlier today, so he is supposed to be here.
Is there
There he is.
anyone?
He just came on.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So let's just do that again. Okay, we'll take roll again. Christopher Avalone.
Here.
Russell Lewis.
Here.
Daniel Harris.
Dan, you have to unmute yourself.
Here.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No problem. Christopher Gonzalez.
Here.
Jill Potter is absent for the record. Tim Slick.
Here.
Brittany Ashman.
Here.
Catherine Minervini.
Here.
And Bonnie Natch.
Here.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
At the meeting on the 14th of July on this application, we had, I'll go by the last names, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Harris, Ms. Potter, Mr. Avalone, Mr. Slick, Ms. Ashman, Mrs. Minervini or Miss Minervini, Ms. Minervini, and Christopher Gonzalez. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members in attendance. Obviously, we only have 7 eligible to vote. This time around, Joe Potter's out. So we have 7 members eligible to vote on the application.
But was Bonnie present on the first meeting?
That's what no, Bonnie wasn't here on the 14th, that according to my notes, but I was going to ask her if she listened to the tape for that hearing for this application.
No, the only tapes I listened to was for Mr. Karras's.
So she's not eligible.
Right. But we would still have 7.
Well, if I just may intervene a second, I think, is that including Mr. Lewis or excluding Mr. Lewis who recused himself?
Oh, sorry. I had him as attending. I didn't have him down as, no, we would have 6.
I attended the first part of that meeting, then I had to recuse myself halfway through
That's
testimony.
right.
So you only have 6.
I think so.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No.
So we're in the same
Oh,
situation.
Joe Potter's out, correct.
Yeah.
So we would have 6, yes.
However, this is not a use variance.
That's correct.
Yep.
But we still only have 6. So are we proceeding?
That
Yes.
would be up to the applicant.
Yes.
Okay.
And did Mr. Karras get back to you yet, Jack, or no?
No.
All right, so let's proceed with the first application then.
Okay.
Before we get into that, I was recused from the last meeting, August 11th, so I need a motion and a second for the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Of the date, Russell.
What's it, August, I'm sorry, what was the date again?
August 11th.
August 11th, thank you.
Thank you. Who was the second? I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Tim. I have a motion by Russell Lewis and a second by Tim Slick. All in, everyone eligible for that meeting. How do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. The minutes of August 11, 2020 are approved, and they are marked into exhibit as Exhibit B1.
Thank you, Irina. And as I was recused from the application that was part of that agenda, I need a motion to approve the resolution and a second.
Before we make a motion, there is still one outstanding point in this, Jack.
Yes. I
Yes,
haven't heard
thank
from
you,
anyone regarding that number 4 color of the
Right.
panels. I in my, when I sent it over, I think that was missing. I put it in red. I
Right.
outlined it in red. And I just couldn't get it from my notes where we wound up on that.
I was unclear on that as well. So maybe we could have a bit of a discussion to maybe refresh and remind all of us on what we had decided on that point.
Okay.
I can't have the discussion. So it's
So
up
why
to
don't we have
Applicant,
Christopher step down for this discussion, and Russell, you assume the chair position,
okay.
please.
We need some clarification on the 4th point. The application shall submit color renderings of the proposed panels of the facade improvements to the board showing the panels to be blank in color. So does the board remember what we had landed on as far as the color of those panels for the facade?
Jack, am I allowed to just,
Yes.
Get you sworn in. Let's have both Doug and Donna sworn in. Please raise your right hands. You solemnly swear the testimony about giving this matter to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Do.
Donna Miller, board planner.
Doug Cleland, board engineer.
Okay, go ahead, Donna.
Okay, so my recollection is that we couldn't get a consensus on the actual color, just that it needed to match the existing building's color. And it was just a question of whether, the brick color was going to be the primary mass, or if the trim color was going to be the primary mass. And you guys kind of left it up to me based on whatever they give us, which looks best. And as a sort of corollary to that, I have a meeting tomorrow with the applicant to talk about what they need to provide me so that I can make that assessment. So, current events. But that's how I recall it going.
So they're going to be presenting options to you and you will be deciding?
Well, that's how I understood it. They're of the persuasion that I design it and they'll, agree. And I'm not in the business of designing their stuff, so.
Yeah, I prefer you not be in the business of designing stuff as well. So, I'm perfectly fine for you making the ultimate decision, but I would like the homeowners association or the management company, whoever's going to be presenting this to you, to, provide you what they feel is the best based, and then, hopefully you can approve that. If it feels way out of line, you want to bring that back.
Very particular material that they're using for their screen wall so that the signal can be transmitted and without being obscured. So, I don't know what colors those come in, or they talked about how they can sort of screen print or whatever onto it, but we need a sample that shows us how it actually turns out, right?
I have a
If I
question.
may, Catherine. Oh, I'm sorry, Christopher. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think Brittany gave a suggestion. Brittany, you don't remember? Do you remember?
I don't remember what I suggested. I just wanted Donna to review it.
Yeah, I know.
all I-
Catherine,
We kind of went back and forth. Everybody said that either some of them like the lighter color, some
Darker
people like the
color.
darker color, and we were like split.
I think we were like almost, we were half and half.
Split.
So I want them to give me a mock-up of each, and then I'll be able to kind of get a feel if the darker color is too heavy. And you guys pointed out, the mock-ups they gave us had the very cloudy sky background. So it looked like
Can I just stop this massive discussion on this? This is a little bit like too much for just to approve this resolution. It doesn't look like it's going to get approved tonight. So I think you need to provide your comments to Jack and let Jack compile what people are saying rather than hash this out right now. Is everyone in agreement? It just seems like there's no decision on this.
I'm with me.
okay. Why don't we table it?
Yeah,
And
I think it's a good idea to table it.
send me your comments. What you want me to do?
Okay, sounds good. So everyone will send comments to Jack on this and we'll table it for now.
Can we get a vote? Irina?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Is everyone in agreement to table the discussion for this resolution? Say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
And I'm sorry, just a matter of record keeping. So we're going to strike that as Exhibit B2 for this evening.
It's been tabled, that's all. It hasn't been entered, so you could just table it.
Okay. All right, thank you. And now, do you want Christopher Avalone to take over
Absolutely.
again?
Yeah.
All right. So let's begin the applications. The first one up is 13 Grand Point Way LLC, Ocean View Developments.
Let's get our planner and engineers sworn in case they are needed for discussion purposes.
Mr. Chair, before we get to that, can we just address the 306 in terms
sure
of the
can.
hearing tonight?
Yes, you can. I didn't realize you were back. Okay.
We're back.
Sure, Andy, go ahead.
In light of the fact that there are only 6 members and it is D-variance relief that we are seeking in this application, we're going to ask that it be carried to next month.
Okay, I have no objection to that. Irina, what do we have available in terms of dates?
Okay, we have October 13th available. How does that sound?
That's where would we be on the calendar?
You would be first on the calendar.
10/13. Perfect. Can we
And for the
please?
record, Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed these notices in detail with Irina, and they're in proper form, so we have jurisdiction. So if we're going to carry it by motion, I would suggest we do it without further notice requirement.
Thank you, Jack. I understand. All right. So the only thing is, Irina, you're going to have to ensure that both Brittany and Christopher Gonzalez and whoever else needs to certify are all certified on all of the meetings for that particular application.
Yes,
So,
perfect. And Jack, we're still going to keep the certifications for this evening for Bonnie and Catherine. Is that correct?
Yes, we should mark them. At next month's meeting, we'll mark them in as exhibits and into evidence.
Okay, and I will send you a copy, Andy.
Very good.
all right, so I'll make a motion to carry 306th Avenue to October 13th, 2020 without further notice.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Christopher Avalone and a second by Russell Lewis. All in favor, say aye.
No, only the eligible members.
Oh, I'm sorry. Except for
Brittany.
Brittany Ashman and Christopher Gonzalez. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. So the application for 306th Avenue will be carried to October 13th, 2020 without further notice. Anyone in the public who is here for that hearing, please excuse the delay and please join us on October 13th. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good
All
night.
right, thank you, Mr. Karras. Thank you, Mr. Siegel. Sorry for the confusion.
Okay.
All right, so then
Okay.
let's get back to the first application.
Right.
13 Grand Point Way, Ocean View Developments, 704 4th Avenue. Mr. Santori, I believe.
That is correct. Good evening, everyone. How are you this evening?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is Russell and I'm recused, so I just want to say I'm stepping back.
Sure. Thank
Okay,
you.
for the record, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russell.
Okay, so obviously we left off last time. We had gotten through about 90 minutes of testimony and presentation with some work to be done on our end. We took some of that charge and moved forward and redesigned the building a bit. And we obviously did some different site modifications. So what I'd like to do is get our engineer sworn. Now, last time, Frank from Morgan Engineering was here, but we have Matthew Wilder this evening, who was the original engineer on the project, who had listened to the entire set of tapes and is prepared to continue with representing the additional changes on the plan and fielding any questions that they may have. So if we could get Mr. Wilder sworn in at this point in time and proceed.
Okay. Mr. Wilder, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? He's muted.
Got to be unmuted, Matt.
That's a good start. Yes, I do.
Okay. And please state your name for the record and spell it, please.
Sure. Matthew Wilder, W-I-L-D-E-R. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. I'm also a certified floodplain manager and a certified municipal engineer. I have not testified in front of Asbury Park previously, but I have testified between 25 and 30 boards across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. We accept your credentials.
Thank you very much.
Jack, could you swear in also Donna and Doug too at the same time?
Yes. Donna and Doug, let's do it again. Please raise your right hands. You solemnly swear the testimony about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I can't, you're muted. Anyone that's both Donna's muted. Okay. Doug?
I do.
Okay, yeah, it's got to be on the record, so go ahead.
Donna Miller, board planner.
Doug Cleland, board engineer.
Okay.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Donna, Doug. All right, Mr. Wilder and Mr. Santori, please proceed.
Sure, Mr. Wilder, can you please take us through the plan as modified for this evening, please?
Sure. So the first thing I'll do is I will share my screen showing the revised plan. Everybody see the site plan up right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Has that been marked?
So this is the set of the site plans that were submitted ahead of this meeting. I'm not sure where we left off with exhibits.
Irina, has that been marked?
Yes, it has been pre-marked. Just 1 second. Okay, and that is marked Exhibit A6.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think what I'll first do is do a quick summary of the larger changes that we made to the plan. And then I'll go through the inside engineering review from September 3rd and hit some of the finer points. So from a sort of a macro overview, the most significant change we made to the plan from a site perspective is we did rotate the parking 90 degrees. There was some concern about the vehicles backing out towards the AC units. And realistically, when we shifted it, it just made a lot more sense from a layout perspective to have the parking going east to west versus north to south. So that's probably the most significant change we made relative to the site layout. Some additional changes we made were on the east side of the site. If you recall, we had a sidewalk that was going along that entire perimeter. We've eliminated that sidewalk and proposed some additional plantings. In total, we have 25 Leland cypress plantings on the east side of the site and 36 emerald green arborvitaes on the west side and the south side. So we tried to increase the buffering to soften the site. The next sheet I'm going to flip to is my lighting. Whoops, what just happened? I'm not sure why. Let me just try that one more time. I apologize. Decided to go crazy on me for a second. Let's try that again. All right. So the lighting plan we did revise. We're going to make some additional modifications to it, but what we tried to demonstrate here is the impact of the proposed fencing has on the lighting design. What we typically do is we mask the areas off-site where our lighting has no effect, but at the request of the board engineer, we will add the illumination levels when they're zero off-site, just to sort of demonstrate that we're not negatively impacting any adjacent property owners. And then the last thing I'd like to just point out to from a sort of a global perspective is the truck circulation, the vehicle circulation that we prepared for the property. So again, when we started revising that parking and rotating it 90 degrees, it actually ended up working out quite a bit better, getting vehicles into and out of the parking spaces. What we've indicated here are the two most restrictive turning movements. So first is a turning movement entering the parking space nearest the building. And that is the tightest due to the fact that you have this curve that you have to contend with to get into the parking spot. And then the vehicular movement that we modeled for vehicles leaving, we modeled the southernmost parking space as that has the most limited room to back up and then pull forward to leave the site. So from a site perspective, and Dan Conditor, the architect, will address some of the building related items that are reflected on my plan. But from a site engineering perspective, those are sort of the significant changes we made relative to the revised plan.
And Matthew, before you get much further, I just want to go over a couple of things, if you could, for the board's edification. First of all, as it pertains to the driveway materials, can you describe what we have currently and how the space sizes were related to the building changing?
Sure. So when the building did reduce in size slightly, it afforded us a little bit more room for the parking area. If you recall, we were proposing 8-foot wide parking spaces by 19 feet long. And now we are proposing for the 4 southern parking spaces, 8.5 by 19. So fully conforming stalls. And then the northernmost stall, again, because of the fact that it has the tightest turning radius, that's actually a 10.5-foot wide by 19 space. So before we were requesting relief for parking space size, that relief is no longer being sought. Relative to the
So Mr. Welder, wheel stops being planned?
No. So right now, there's full height curbs surrounding the entire parking area. So that is usually enough of a vehicle to turn. In this situation, I wouldn't have concerns about adding in wheel stops. I typically don't like them because of a tripping hazard. But realistically, if we put them up against the curb line, I wouldn't be concerned with the tripping hazard. But we do have full height curb, which, for lack of a better, the curb stop would essentially maybe protect some of the landscaping, but the curb and the landscaping sort of do that on their own. So relative to the surfaces proposed, at the street, there's an existing concrete apron that we're going to slightly enlarge to account for our new driveway. So that concrete will lead to an asphalt driveway. The driveway will be 10 feet wide. And as you get to the back, when you start entering into the parking area, there's going to be a brick paver parking area. And what we've done, instead of in lieu of more traditional striping, we are proposing to do sort of a brick inlay. And that brick inlay would be a color that would contrast with the remaining brick pavers, sort of demarcating the parking spaces.
I have a few questions. Are those brick pavers, are they pervious?
We're not proposing pervious pavers right now. So they're your standard brick pavers.
So why did you switch from asphalt to the pavers?
Just for aesthetics. Quite often is a more aesthetic approach. Folks like pavers versus blacktop.
And also, why do you not have a handicap spot?
So we are not required to have a handicap spot as part of this development. Mr. Leff, the project planner, will sort of get into it in a little bit more detail. And I know there was a lot of testimony on this project prior as to, is it a townhome? Isn't it a townhome? I don't want to rebroach that subject on my testimony, but what I can say is that the residential site improvement standards, they have a definition for a townhome, and they simply define a townhome as living space that goes from ground to ceiling with both multiple units. So per RSIS, I understand that the city's definition is different, but per RSIS, this is considered a townhome, and a townhome development does not need to provide handicap parking.
Is it possible to have pervious pavement there?
So I have, as I go through the inside engineering letter, I have some pointed testimony to address stormwater management, and typically any type of porous pavement, porous pavers, porous concrete is really as a mitigation for stormwater management. So we are going to be proposing some stormwater management measures in the form of a dry well. So I think maybe I can address that at a later point, but without getting too far ahead of myself, we did consider stormwater management from this property.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So at this point, I'll fairly quickly sort of run through the inside engineering letter. Again, that's dated 9/3/20. So I'm going to jump to page 2 regarding the site plan completeness review. So we take no exception to complying with those 16 comments. 16 comments. I will just quickly elaborate on a couple of them. Again, comment number 11 talks about the increase in impervious coverage. I will get to that very shortly in my testimony, but again, we are trying to mitigate the increase in stormwater runoff. I'll quickly hit number 16, which talks about site maintenance. So the property owner will privately maintain the property, and that'll sort of lead into my concerns with porous pavers and porous asphalt. But again, there's not going to be a sort of a homeowners association. The site will be privately maintained. Beyond those 2 comments, we take no exception to the remaining 14. I'm going to jump ahead now to the zoning review and comment number 17. Question regarding how we came to the 0.476 floor area ratio. 2 things were essentially done.
Excuse me for interrupting. Which report are you referring to on the zoning review?
I'm referring to comment number 17, the top of page 4.
And what's the date?
Oh, September 3rd, 2020.
It's still the inside engineering letter, Jack.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes.
I thought he was going to the planner's report.
No, I'm going to go all the way through the insight letter.
And just for the record, that revised insight engineering report has been marked into evidence as B3.
Okay. I'm sorry for the interruption. What page were you referring to again?
The top of page 4, zoning review, comment number 17.
Thank you. Okay.
So the question was how we came to the 0.476 floor area ratio. So 2 things were done, and the architect will speak in more detail about this, but the main thing is we reduced the height of the basement. Obviously, a basement 7 feet of head height or greater is counted in the floor area ratio. Less than 7 feet is not. So we have reduced the height of the basement, so it is no longer consistent or considered in the floor area ratio. Besides that, the building was tweaked and massaged a little bit, and I believe it was decreased slightly, but that is the reason that we are proposing now the 0.476 floor area ratio. And then lastly, I'll just very quickly hit comment number 19. I realize that my plan did not provide dimensions for rear yard setbacks. So the required rear yard setback for this zone is 25 feet. 77 feet exists and 53 feet is proposed. Fully conforming, but I just thought it important to put it on the record. Going into the development review comments, sort of into the bottom of page 4. Again, we take no issue adding the additional dimensions. Comment number 25 talks about additional buffering, which again, I've indicated we have 25 Leland cypresses on the east side of the property. And on the west and south side, we are proposing 36 emerald green arborvitaes. I briefly talked about the lighting. Again, I'll just quickly hit it again. We are, we're gonna, one of the comments was about a street light across 4th Ave facing our property. We're gonna model that light in a revised submission to see if that light provides any illumination for our driveway. In the event that it does not, we'll add additional lighting as necessary to ensure that we have a well-illuminated entrance that is safe for ingress and egress. Last, just on 26D talks about a floodlight in the rear of the building. So as it's currently proposed, there really is almost like no light spillage from our proposed development. The areas of light spillage you'll see are 0.2, 0.3, some very small areas of 0.4 at the property line. That's actually consistent with sort of ambient moonlight. So the proposed lighting as designed has really been designed to be really selective, that it only impacts.
And how would you come to those numbers, Mr. Wilder? Did you test that, or?
So we have a program that we use. It's called Visual, and what it does is it allows us to basically model a site as it relates to illumination levels. So we input the type of the light. So it inputs the model, the make, the wattage. We input the height of it, and essentially what it does is it spits out these numbers and it creates these illumination contours. So I'll zoom in.
So it's more theoretical than real.
Again, regarding the validity of the program, I can't really comment on that. but it is a widely accepted program to perform lighting analyses.
And Doug, are you okay with that?
Well, I think the comment was more geared toward, I mean, I get the whole level of the light on the ground, but being that it's more of a floodlight type of fixture, the comment was more geared towards the source of the light and the ability for the light to be bright at the source, not cut off, from view of, especially from like second floor bedrooms and stuff like that.
Understood.
Yeah, again, we have no issue replacing the light with a different style. Again, we're trying to throw it down and throw it out, not really trying to throw it sideways, if you will. So again, we take no exception to swapping out the light to a more full cutoff type wall pack. That's no issue.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder.
How tall is the lights?
So right now, the way it's modeled is, and if you're looking at the screen, we indicate the heights that the lights are run at. So there's these lights are these B lights that are say B at 8 feet. Those lights are run at 8 feet, and then there's some that are run at 17 feet.
Okay, because I think the planner's report suggested under 16 feet.
That's not an issue. We can certainly put them to 15 and a half or 16 feet. That's not really going to impact the lighting design. So we have to revisit the lighting design anyway.
Yes, he was a little bit dinged last year, but look back to his rookie season. It was 2,000 scrimmage yards. Got a little taste in the fantasy playoffs last year.
Sorry about that, Bonnie. Please mute your microphone. Thank you.
So yeah, no issue with lowering the lights to 16 feet for the taller of the lights. And everywhere else on site, mainly in the back, we are actually proposing sort of bollard lights. They're very small lights, 4 or 5 feet tall, and they'll actually be fully blocked by the existing fencing. So again, no issue tweaking the lights and revising them to sort of be more consistent with what you guys are looking for.
So this is Donna Miller. And the height is less of an issue if you're going to use a full cutoff fixture. So I know Doug and I will be very interested in seeing a revised photometric if you employ a different style fixture, and that may solve a lot of our concerns.
Okay. Yeah, I still think, like I said, if we need to add some additional bollard lights because the full cutoff doesn't throw as far, that's not an issue. We can certainly.
And I understand people who have those second floor units and have that little balcony space, are going to want a light. And so we just want it to be as low impact as possible on the adjoining residents.
Understood. Absolutely. So the next comment I'll go to is comment 27, which talks about stormwater. So.
First, what is your objection, Mr. Wilder, of using more of a pervious type of
paver?
Yes.
I have concerns with pervious pavement and pervious pavers due to maintenance, typically snow removal. It's incredibly hard to maintain just because of the fact that you can't treat it how you typically would treat an asphalt surface. So a typical asphalt surface, you can put sand down, you can put salt down. You're not worried about clogging the pores or anything like that. With a porous material, the exact opposite is true. You have to ensure that you don't clog the pores because your porous asphalt or porous pavers are no longer porous. It's the same as you put down porous asphalt and then you seal coat it. It no longer operates how it's intended to. So typically, you'll have difficulty maintaining these areas in the winter months just because of the fact that it's meant to sort of hold water. So because it's meant to hold water, I get concerned with icing and slip and fall hazards. There are locations and solutions where a porous material, a porous concrete sidewalk, let's say, is appropriate. In my opinion, this site is not conducive to a porous paver or porous asphalt for just that reason. But so relative to the stormwater, let me sort of walk you guys through what we're going to propose. I know at the last meeting it was requested that we provide this on a revised plan. we sort of wanted to get this board's feedback before we located and sized and designed the dry well system, but I can certainly tell you what we intend to do. So between the building and 4th Ave, we're going to install these, they're called ADS storm tech chambers. And essentially what they are is they're pipes that are cut in half. So they're installed on a stone bed, so they allow water to infiltrate. And they would be sized to basically fully detain what we call the 2-year storm. So in any given year, that storm has a 50% chance of occurring. Larger storms would sort of bypass the system, but what we would be proposing is something in this area. Whoops, did it again. Something in this area that sort of goes in between here, and we acknowledge that some of the utilities may need to be rerouted around the system and come into the building on the side. But we would be proposing enough storage to fully capture all the roof runoff and fully detain it without the benefit of infiltration for the 2-year storm event. So the means by which we'll accomplish that is the gutters for the structure, for the homes, for the building will be sloped from south to north towards 4th Avenue. And then when you get to the front of the building, you'll have downspouts that tie directly into an underground recharge system. So generally speaking, we're not going to send any runoff from the structure or from impervious surfaces towards any of the adjacent properties. I did take a look at the existing site and sort of how it drains today. So there is a ridge in roughly the center of the site that takes the runoff on the north half, sends it all to 4th Avenue. The runoff from the southern portion of the property actually goes from east to west towards Lot 4. There's about 4,400 square feet, give or take, of runoff from the existing site that's going towards Lot 4. What we're proposing is all of the paved parking area and drive aisle will be directed towards 4th Avenue. So from a sort of a west to east direction across the parking field, we have about 0.75%. And then down the driveway, we have between 0.75 and 1.5%. So that runoff will be contained within a curb, go down the driveway, go into 4th, then will be captured by inlets within the roadway. The building, as I indicated, will be directed entirely to a dry well in between 4th Ave and the building. And then when that overflows, if the capacity is exceeded by the storm event, we'll have 2 means or methods by which we have an overflow. First, we'll have a Y fitting at the downspout that allows runoff to discharge at grade via a splash block and go towards the street. The second means is these types of systems require sort of inspection ports at the corners, so you can monitor how they're functioning. If you notice standing water, you can rectify it or remedy it. So those inspection ports will also act as sort of what we call pop-ups. So when the system becomes overwhelmed, you have a secondary relief point, which is those drains that allow you to inspect the system. So post-development, we're reducing the amount of runoff to Lot 4 by roughly 90%. I determined that there's about 400 to 450 square feet of grassed area that we can't capture that will go on to Lot 4. As I indicated initially, about 4,400 square feet of runoff goes to Lot 4 from the subject property now. So without question, I can indicate that we will reduce the impervious runoff, all the runoff to adjacent properties, and 95% of all of our runoff will be directed towards 4th Ave.
I have a question about actual building coverage, because I see that there's different numbers between your plans and then both engineering and planning report.
Okay.
So I guess.
So we are proposing building coverage of 25.4%. Let me just, which?
I'm looking at number 27 of Doug's report. He's proposing, or he says that it's 63.7. Or is that just impervious?
That's impervious coverage.
That's correct.
Okay, sorry.
And through the site modifications that we did, we're actually, the 63.7 was the prior application that you guys heard previously. and now we've reduced it a couple percentage points down to 61.4. So the building coverage were proposed at 25.4%, where 25% is permitted. And then Mr. Conditor and Mr. Leff will sort of go over how we arose to the building coverage we're at, and then the justifications for the variance being sought.
Where do you plan to put your HVAC equipment and your refuse dumpsters and all of that, Mr. Wilder?
So we are proposing 3 AC units in the back of the building, on the south side of the building. In the event that we end up doing 2 zones for all of these units, most likely a second AC unit will be located in the attic of the individual units. Relative to refuse enclosure, we're proposing 1 bin for both garbage and 1 bin for recycling. So you'll notice we're showing 6 bins in the rear of our property. 3 of those bins will be earmarked for garbage, and then 3 will be earmarked for recycling.
And will the trucks come into the property to empty those refuse bins, or how will that work?
I'm not certain if, my hunch is that due to the significant shoulder on 4th Avenue, the private hauler will probably pick it up at the street. We would need to confirm with the hauler that is selected that is the case. Obviously, there's certain requirements we need to meet from both the city's perspective and for the private hauler. So considering the right-of-way width of 4th Ave and the width of the area available to us, I'm assuming that
I don't see how a truck would turn around if there's cars in there. How would that work?
Right, that's why I'm indicating I believe that they'll be picked up at the street. The parking lot has not been designed for a refuse vehicle to make a K-turn. So if the vehicle had to come onto the property, they'd be backing out, which is not an ideal.
Not good.
Right. So again, I believe they'll be picking up the trash and the recyclables from 4th Avenue, from bins on the road.
What you're saying, I believe, but you don't know.
They will. They will, unless there's a city ordinance that prohibits it, which I'm not aware of. The bins will be placed on the street, and they will be picked up from the street.
What size will these bins be?
What was that?
What size will they be, sir?
I'm not sure what the standard garbage bin size. I think typically they have 40 or 50 gallons. So they'll be, substantial enough to support this kind of development. Again, these are, in simplest terms, single family units pushed together.
So there'll be some type of property management going on, a privately property manager.
Yes.
Okay, will there be a fence around them?
Right now, we're not proposing to fence around them. We certainly can. We look at it that the existing or the proposed site will have many arborvitaes circling the entire property, and you also have a solid fence surrounding the property. So from a neighboring perspective, you're really not going to see them. If just to keep the back area clean, you guys wanted a small fence enclosure for all the bins, I see no issue with that.
No, I would like to see that because sometimes there is the issue with spillage, with garbage, animals trying to get in, things like that.
And a fence also tells the resident where the bins should be placed. So you're not going to have bins everywhere. So that makes sense, and I don't see any issue with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So before I move on, I know stormwater was sort of a sticking point last time. Does anyone have additional questions or would like me to elaborate on anything related to the stormwater?
Yeah, I have another question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
So essentially what you're proposing, Mr. Wilder, is a dry well.
To handle all the roof runoffs, that's correct.
And now you're basing it on a 2-year storm. What if it's a worse storm? 2-year means nothing to us, Mr. Wilder. We're on the ocean. So I think you have to really step up your game a little and really think outside the box and go beyond 2 years.
Right. So one of the things we wanted to ensure is that we were not negatively impacting any adjacent properties. That is sort of first and foremost on our minds when we're doing a development. So right now, the way it's designed, and as the Insight Engineering letter had pointed out, we're not what is considered a major development. A major development is a development that disturbs more than 1 acre or increases impervious surfaces by a 1/4 acre or more.
I understand the ordinance, Mr. Wilder, but that is not what, our job is to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. So I again say, how are you going to propose a more, I would say, safe situation for storm management? 2 years does not seem good enough to me.
Right. So again, right now the system as I'm proposing it contains the entire 2-year storm without the benefit of infiltration. So what that means is we can't take any credit for stormwater going into the ground. If the board would like, we can do some soils testing. We'll need to do it anyway for the basement. We can determine the permeability of the site, and then we can do the same analysis and try to maintain or prevent any discharge from the building for the 10-year storm event. So the 10-year storm event would be a storm that has a 10% chance of occurring in any given year, or occurs once every 10 years. So again, we need to support it with some soils testing, but I think realistically speaking, we could very easily manage the roof via a dry well for the entirety of the 10-year storm when considering infiltration.
I'm not completely satisfied. Please go on.
I have a follow-up question on that. Is it possible, maybe this is a question for Doug, is it possible to tie into the city stormwater that we did, that we requested in a previous application, or is that not at the site?
So I'd like to address 2 things. One, maybe Mr. Wilder might be able to answer that better as to the availability of any stormwater connections within the street. In my recollection, I don't think there's any nearby, but there was none shown on the survey. So as of right now, we're not sure if there's a direct connection possible. And then just to clarify, our comment, kind of the gold standard as far as, you have your development pre-development and your development post-development. Kind of the gold standard, as far as non-major developments, and the increase of stormwater runoff is, to prove, via a dry well along with some supporting calculations, that there is no increase from existing conditions to proposed conditions in the amount of stormwater runoff leaving the site. I think if that can be demonstrated, I think that, Chris, that may satisfy you.
I would feel more comfortable, Doug. I just, I don't really want to base it on a 2-year storm.
Well, Mr. Wilder, if I may interject a moment, aren't we saying through your testimony, just to clarify, that we have a net reduction? We've reallocated the previous runoff that was spilling onto the property by 4,400. It was whatever your 4,400 square foot of runoff that was going on to that other property, down to less than about 400 feet. I think you said that was left along the side due to the grass areas that would be a spill, which is redirecting all of that runoff. And additionally, we have no net impact. There's currently 0 stormwater management on the property, correct?
Correct.
And as a result of that, we are certainly negating and reducing, and we don't have a net increase, correct?
So we would be reducing what's going towards lot 4. What is going into the street, into 4th Avenue, there would be an increase in stormwater runoff from the current design. So there's certain challenges with respect to capturing and trying to recharge driveways and parking areas. First and foremost, you can't just capture those areas and send them directly underground. Those areas need to be captured and treated before they can go underground. So the only real mechanism to treat a parking area or a driveway is to propose a surface basin to treat the stormwater runoff, or to propose a filter, which is in almost all circumstances cost prohibitive. So we're reducing the runoff to any adjacent properties, but there is going to be an increase in stormwater runoff to 4th Avenue from the proposed development, which again, that I'm not sure how close the nearest inlet is, but I remember walking the property or walking the street and seeing inlets in the road, and essentially the runoff that goes into 4th would travel via the gutter flow until it's captured by an inlet in the roadway.
If that was pervious surface, would that decrease the amount of stormwater runoff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please proceed, Mr. Wilder.
Sure. So moving on to comments 28 and beyond that, a lot of details were requested that we add regarding pavement repair. Should curb be damaged? Should sidewalk be damaged? We take no exception to adding those notes and adding those details. I'd like to just now jump really quickly to comment number 34, sort of in the middle of page 7, which references ordinance section 30-59-.13A1, which talks about the allowable curb line opening and the allowable driveway width. So the allowable curb line opening is between 12 and 30 feet for a two-way driveway. We're proposed at 15, so we're compliant. And then a driveway width for two-way is permitted at 10 to 26 feet, and we're proposed at 10 feet. So just wanted to get on the record that we are compliant with that requirement. And then lastly, just on comment number 41, the top of page 8, regarding outside agency approvals. Understanding that this is an important application, we wanted to get some more clarity from this board before proceeding with an application to the Freehold Soil Conservation District, Monmouth County. So those applications will be filed, but they are currently pending as we are sort of working with this board to confirm sort of the general layout and design of the proposed site improvements. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that I have not specifically addressed.
I have another question from the planner's report. It says that you won't be able to back out unless going into the landscaping buffer.
Yeah, so here we're showing.
If I may, let's make sure we've got a number of reports from the planner. Which report are you referring to? 8 wise?
Number page 8B, potential turning movement conflicts.
Page 8B.
That's our
Page
September
8 of,
report.
Yep. So what we've demonstrated with this revised circulation, so the southernmost parking, the southern parking space is going to have the tightest turning radius because you have the least amount of room to back up. And we've illustrated the vehicular movement where the bumper overhangs the curb and then leaves. So it's not actually going into the buffer area. And you'll notice that even there's probably 3 to 4 feet in the vehicle swing where we're not on top of the next parking space over. So in reality, I don't even think a car would have to back up this far to leave the property. But that was sort of the main benefit that I saw when we reoriented the parking, is that it was much more accommodating for vehicles to get into and out of the parking spaces.
but it looks like they go over the line when you're coming into the, like right in front of the last door.
Here?
Yeah.
I think that's just we can again fix that. I think that's just a program issue with the line. So we can obviously shift that a little bit, and we will not be going over the line to access to get into or out of any of these parking spaces. So we can clean that that error up.
In your opinion, Doug, do you think that this is a safe layout?
Yeah, it certainly is tight, but I think it works. If Mr. Wilder can clean up the plan just to there's a couple spots where it touches over a little bit and there's a landscape buffer there. I think we'd be okay with it. We had another comment as to placing a couple protected bollards near the mechanical equipment. Just as that car in the northernmost spot's backing out, it could get kind of tight, just to help protect that equipment there and avoid any potential damage.
We take no issue with adding a couple bollards to protect those units.
What about the fencing, Mr. Wilder? What's being used as fencing?
So right now there's an existing wood fence on the property. So it's actually in pretty good condition. So the intent is to take that existing wood fence and relocate it to the property line where it's not currently on the property line, with a slight exception that the existing fence stops relatively close to where the front setback is. So we're going to propose a sort of a picket fence from that point to the front. So yeah, there's an existing solid fence that wraps around the entire property that is, again, in good condition, and we're looking to maintain that
But
fence.
from what I understand, there will be fences that are going to be removed. Is that correct?
It's not really being removed. It's just being relocated to the property line. So the existing fence is in pretty good condition, like I said. So the intent is to use that existing fence around the property.
And it's a wood fence, correct?
That's correct.
And you're not planning to use any vinyl fencing?
No, we're not. I noticed that my plan as I'm speaking says vinyl picket. Obviously, if we're going to match the existing fence in type and sort of appearance. So that would also be sort of a wood picket fence from that point towards the front of the property.
Okay. Do any of the other board members have any other questions?
Yeah, one last question. In the engineering report, it mentions that you didn't landscape 10% of the area, which you need a variance for. Is there any additional plantings that you could put in so that variance is not needed?
So my understanding of that requirement is that is interior lot landscaping. So in order to do that, we would have to essentially carve out almost like a finger island in the parking field to allow for some plantings. So it's not sort of perimeter, it's specific to the interior lot landscaping. So the only way to really do that would be to eliminate a parking space. So for that reason, we're seeking that variance.
I would agree with that as well. It's geared towards internal islands and, as far as the landscaping goes, they certainly did add quite a bit of perimeter buffering. If that were to somehow be able to be quantified, I think they would get pretty close to the 10%. It's more of a technical issue.
Okay. And then street trees, are those proposed?
We're proposing one street tree, sort of in the northwestern corner. We could certainly propose an additional tree on this side of the concrete, on the east side of the concrete sidewalk, in between the concrete sidewalk and the driveway.
This is Donna Miller. That's not a street tree.
Oh. Well, it should be.
By the curb line in the right of way, you're proposing front yard landscaping.
Right. So the street, we have existing street trees in between the existing sidewalk and 4th Ave. We're not, as far as we're not looking to sort of integrate any new plantings in that area, if that's your question. We're looking to maintain those existing plantings.
Okay, and this is Donna again. So in our report, we point out that one of the trees is in poor condition, has a great big hole in the bottom of the trunk, and that there is a section of the ordinance that requires you either make a contribution or put in trees for every application. So you're gonna have to do one or both.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I think we testified to this last time, just to refresh the record on this area. We had already indicated that we would replace that tree.
That's all the questions I had. Thanks.
Do any other board members have any questions for Mr. Wilder? All right. Board professionals, Donna, Doug, do you have any further questions for Mr. Wilder?
I have a quick point of clarification on the stormwater management. So it was mentioned that there would be both overflows at the downspout locations and a pop-up emitter or the inspection port essentially acting as one. Is it possible just to, so in the event of a larger, lower frequency rain event, to add some additional protection to the lot to the west? Is it possible to add a small berm along with the landscaping and some additional grading to show that, the extra runoff will wind up in 4th Avenue?
Sure. I don't think that would be an issue. And again, we could even, as an extra sort of measure of safety, we could eliminate sort of the Y fitting at the building and just utilize on that side of the site sort of the pop-up drain connected to the underground facility. Again, the inspection, we need to have the inspection port anyway to sort of monitor the system, make sure it's functioning properly. So typically, because we have them anyway, I like to use them as a sort of a pop-up overflow where it's appropriate. So I think we can look at tweaking the grades, and we can also eliminate the Y fitting for that downspout. That the only real discharge from the system would be from the pop-up on that side, and the eastern side would have both the Y fitting and the pop-up. I don't think that's an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Donna, do you have any questions?
No, I think I'm okay for now.
All right, so at this point, I will open it up to the public for questions directly related to Mr. Wilder's testimony. Please raise a hand if you have any questions for Mr. Wilder's testimony. Irina, do we have anybody in the public who has any questions for Mr. Wilder?
I show one person with their hand raised, 2 people now. And again, just to let everyone in the public know, if you are on a telephone and you would like to raise your hand, please dial *9. And on your computer, you just click raise hand. Mr. Edward Baumgarten, please go ahead and speak.
Yes. So I'm having internet connectivity problems. I'm hoping that I can be heard correctly. Can I get an affirmative on that?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My first question, I have a number of them because a lot of points came up. I'm going to address them in the manner that they came up. First was Mr. Wilder had claimed in terms of handicap issues that this was a townhome. And my question to him is if this is a townhome or is this not? I'm curious about how you can kind of have it both ways. It either is or it isn't.
So from the...
Well, if I could just interject a second, Mr. Wilder, relative to the definition.
My question was for Mr. Wilder.
I
Attorney has a right to interject. Let him speak.
Yes, Mr. Serpico, thank you. I was just going to indicate that Mr. Leff is here as our board planner and professional, and he will be testifying to that fact. Mr. Wilder just indicated that based upon RSIS standards, as it pertained to strictly the handicap space, he was just opining as to that. So if the question is as to the handicap space, fine, I suppose, but I would think a more pointed answer would be coming from Mr. Leff, who's going to be testifying on this specific issue.
So Mr. Wilder's testimony is that this is a townhome.
It meets the definition of a townhome per the residential site improvement standards. And this issue had come up, and they specifically have addressed it in that a townhome type development, which it's not a type of ownership, it's simply a type of building where it's a multi-unit building and each unit goes from the ground floor to the roof. So per the residential site improvement standard, it's defined as a townhome, and a townhome development is not required to be handicap accessible.
Okay, so you're defining this as a townhome again, just to confirm that.
Just as it relates to the residential site improvement standards.
element, that will be Mr. Leff who's testifying.
Please proceed, Mr.
Second
Baumgartner.
on my list here is that Mr. Wilder testified that consideration was done for stormwater management. How?
Right. So again, that was where I talked about the chambers that we'll be utilizing in the front yard that will capture all of the runoff from the proposed building.
I think that's the solution. How was how was it actually considered? Not how was it just not what the proposal is.
Right. So we looked at two main items. The first one we looked at is what is sort of going on to neighboring properties now. We wanted to ensure that we were not going to negatively impact any adjacent properties with stormwater runoff. So when we looked at the proposed development, we realized we're capturing predominantly all of our stormwater runoff and relaying it to 4th Avenue with the exception of the actual structure itself. So to ensure that the structure itself does not cause runoff onto adjacent properties, that's why we're proposing the dry wells. The dry wells will take the runoff from the roof, put it underground, and then when it overflows, it will go into the street. So again, first and foremost, our analysis was to ensure that we were not negatively impacting adjacent properties.
Did you consider how much stormwater goes towards 4th Avenue now, and not just the additional amount that will be going towards it?
I did, and again, we are increasing the runoff that goes from the property now to 4th Avenue. That would be captured in the inlets in the street. But again, as we always prefer, if at all possible, to direct runoff into the street versus towards adjacent properties. So that's why we designed.
So you're aware that that the sidewalk routinely floods when it rains right now. There's a significant amount of water that's already going in that direction.
I have not been to the property in a rainfall event, so I'm not certain as to what occurs when it rains.
I can attest to that. Another question I have is in terms of the lighting on this. You've got a lighting plan that shows light spillage. And I noticed that some of the spillage goes across the property line on the north, and that is, and so I'm sorry, my name is Edward Baumgartner. I'm at 706 4th Avenue. That's my property over there. Somehow the dotted line magically cuts off. Does that extend onto my front porch?
Right. So right now at the property line that abuts your property, we're showing
Yes.
an illumination level of 0.4 foot candles. 0.4 foot candles, as I indicated previously, is consistent with ambient moonlight. So the light nearest your property is only an 8-foot tall light. So you should not experience any light trespass or light spillage that would have any impact on you enjoying your front porch.
But there will be light spillage on my front porch and I'm assuming the lights are on at what hours?
So it would be typical of a residential home. So more often than not, folks either put motion sensors on their lights, or they leave them on, they turn them off, and they go to bed. I would not expect these lights to be on overnight. But again, the light levels that we're talking about at the property line are consistent with moonlight. So we're talking about a very low intensity light coming over the property line. So while we are showing some minor spillage onto the property, again, it's well within the tolerance of reason. And again, it should not cause any detrimental impacts to your property.
Well, it might be minimal for you. I'm just trying to ascertain that there will be light spillage onto my front porch whenever the light is on. And if that comes on intermittently, whether that stays on all the time, we don't know the answer to that, correct?
Right. I'm not sure what timers it would be, but I assume I haven't taken note of your property or the other properties along Fourth Ave, but I would assume most properties have a light on their porch to illuminate their entrance into the structure. So it's nothing that's out of line with what is existing within the neighborhood, I'm sure.
Okay, I'm going to switch to another question here. Again, this is based upon what you had testified to. I have the same question about a 2-year storm. I know that's been addressed, but that seems to be a bare minimum in terms of what we've experienced. Why wasn't anything longer term, 10, 25 year considered? The severity of our storms have been increasing, not decreasing.
Sure. So the minimum design storm that the requirements discuss is what's called the water quality storm. This is a storm that produces 1.25 inches of rain in a 2-hour period. That's your most common storm. So again, what we tried to do is I realized coming into this that doing what would be considered the bare minimum is not really a feasible solution. So what we designed it for is to fully detain, again, the 2-year storm without the benefit of infiltration. So what that means is I can't take credit for any permeability of the stormwater going through the soil and going down into the water table. When I add into the design the permeability of the underlying soil, I'm certain that I'll be able to eliminate all runoff from the roofed portion of the structure of the dwelling for all storms up to and including the 10-year storm event, which again is a storm that would occur, a 10% chance of occurring in any given year. I think, again, I think that would be a reasonable request for this board to make, and I think we can accommodate that, based on the site configuration that we have.
So I'm not quite understanding. If you could explain this a little bit further. You say that that you can add in the permeability of the soil, yet almost no square footage on this is actually soil. There's pavers, there's asphalt, there's building. Where would this water? Where would this groundwater go? Where would it? How would it get into the soil?
So this system would be located between the building and the front property line. So right now we just have a grassed area that's divided by a concrete walk in that area. This system would go underneath that concrete walk. So the system is, like I indicated before, is pipes that are basically cut in half and placed on a stone bed. So it would not be visible at all from the surface, with the exception of sort of the inspection ports or the drains at the corners of the system. So the roof runoff would tie into that system directly, and it would go into an underground pipe, will be held and infiltrated, and then when a larger storm occurs, it would bypass it by the pop-ups and the Y fittings we discussed previously.
So if a larger storm happens, where does that additional water go? You say it goes into the soil, but there's, how does that,
sure,
where is that soil? I'm seeing a very small front yard.
Right.
50 square feet maybe is exposed. Where does that permeable soil happen? How does that additional water get routed?
Again, so the system right now, the porch is about 20 feet. It is 20 feet from the front property line. So these systems occupy about 12 feet in width and about 25 feet in length. So that would be the size of the system. And the way this system is designed, it sits on a stone bed, it has stone on the sides, and it has stone on the top. As water comes in from the roof, it fills up the pipe. The pipe then fills up the stone, and the water is held and infiltrated into the ground, through the soil. If the soil, the stone, and the pipe all become saturated, what happens is the system will overflow and the runoff will go into Fourth Ave.
Okay, I don't think this addresses really that anything past that 2-year storm, but let me move on. Parking. The spots over there and the turning radiuses seem tight, to say the least. What size vehicles was this actually drawn for?
So right now, the two vehicles we run are sort of your standard full-size sedans. So the vehicle is about 16 and a half feet wide, and the width is about just under it's also 6.5 feet wide. So that's your Honda Accord, your Toyota Camry. Again, your standard full-size sedan. So again, we were showing the two most restrictive turning movements. Obviously, these parking spaces will be assigned. If a resident has a larger vehicle, they will be assigned a interior parking space, which is easier to access with a larger vehicle. So while I agree it is tight, it does work.
And if all the vehicles are large SUV types, which is the prevailing trend, how does that get addressed?
If 5 individual homeowners drive all expeditions or excursions or Yukons?
Yeah, sure, could happen, yeah.
Yeah, again, so we would have issues with accessing that interior parking space. But I think we all acknowledge that there's a trend that people are sort of moving away from the large vehicles, especially I'm sure you've noticed in the city that many people are not even having vehicles. So while we provided what I consider appropriate parking, the two nearest parking spaces, both on the north and south side, would have some minimal difficulties if they were accessed by an SUV. What would end up happening is to potentially get into and out of those spots with a large SUV is you might have to do additional turning points. So you might have to pull forward, back up a little bit, and then pull into the space. I still think a vehicle would be able to access it. It just would not be as smooth a transition into the space as I show currently.
Okay, my last question for you, Mr. Wilder, is about the landscaping that you brought up. You're showing the trees, I guess these are cypresses, or I'm not sure what they are, the ones around the perimeter. These are shown as being very nice, tight little 3-foot diameter graphics. What do they grow out to? Because the trees on the north perimeter are 18 inches from my house, from my actual structure.
Oh,
so
not including the roof line.
Right. So in this type of situation, the trees really grow based on how they are maintained and managed. If they're allowed to grow in a excessive width or a large diameter, some of these trees can grow to fairly large diameters. In this situation, because of the space that we're limited to on both the west and the east side, and even the south for that matter, these would be continually maintained to be more of a columnar, narrow tree.
And just to interject, Mr. Wilder, the two species that we're talking about, they're different on either sideline of the property, correct?
That's correct.
As it pertains to Lot 4, which I'm assuming is Mr. Baumgarten's property, that was previously about the property itself being approximately 17 inches from his house, that it's now been moved back for an increased setback to a little bit over around 6 feet. In that planting, we're talking about the smaller of the two, which is the emerald green arborvitae, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So my question is, what diameter do these grow out to, and to what height?
Again, it's a function of the maintenance of the property, of the tree itself. I mean, realistically, I think a 2-foot diameter tree could be maintained, and again, the height is going to be a function of the width that's maintained of the tree. So these will have continual maintenance because of the fact that it is in a relatively tight area. So realistically, I would think you'd be looking at 2 to 3 foot diameter tree in totality. And the height would be a function of what would be stable. I don't envision anything really greater than maybe 10 to 12 feet in height. But I'm not certain as to the height would be when you consider the width.
Now, Mr. Wilder, just as a matter of housekeeping as it pertains to your plan, and I know we're not really in the question and answer, but I just want to try and help this along for Mr. Baumgarten's sake. We don't have any issue with the trees that directly are adjacent or nearest to Mr. Baumgarten's residence, with locating them maybe a little bit closer in as it pertains to just trying to maintain the swales and stuff that Mr. Cleveland's looking for, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
about the parking lot?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I haven't, you know, again, my question then becomes about maintenance on this. Who does this? What happens if it doesn't get maintained? I think it's completely unrealistic to put a tree 18 inches from a house and expect it not
You're
to
commenting, Mr.
affect it.
Baumgarten. You're commenting. Please ask direct questions to Mr. Wilder. Please ask direct questions.
Those were that was it. That was a direct question about the maintenance on it. Saying maintenance will be done by whom, how often, how does that happen? I mean, it's easy to say. How does that actually happen?
There'll be a private maintenance company that it's hired by the property owner to maintain all elements of the property. That would, I'm sure, including snow removal during winter months and landscaping and tree trimming in the growing seasons.
So to be ensured that there's no overhang onto the property line and interfering with the structure that's on my property?
The trees will not interfere with the structure on your property. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Mr. Baumgarten?
No.
All right, thank you. Irina, please call on the next public comment, public question.
Thank you. The next person I have is Warner Baumgartner. Please go ahead and speak.
Okay, let's see if this works. I push unmute. Hello?
But Warner, we can barely hear you. Can you speak up, please?
Hello, testing, 1, 2.
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Baumgarten. How are you?
I'm Gardner. Baumgartner. Differentiate me from the prior speaker. Just a procedural question right off the top. Are we going to hear from someone to talk about the architecture or style of the building?
Yes.
We are. Okay, good. All right. I'm going to go backward in my questioning here, starting from where we left off about building maintenance. It's a very interesting problem that I just heard about maintaining space at 06. So why is it deemed advisable to put trees on that property line anyway? Why not just remove the trees?
When we were at the prior hearing, this board had talked about the additional need for buffering, and the real way to achieve additional buffering would be additional landscaping.
Okay, so it's intended to provide some sort of screening, privacy, buffering between the two properties, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In doing so, did you consider the adjacent property owner who just testified or asked questions, how he's going to maintain his building? How does one get access to maintain that building facade in an 18-inch space?
So currently, for the owner to maintain the eastern side of his building, he has no alternative but to come onto the subject property. But the point raised by Mr. Baumgartner is well received in that we're going to shift those plantings a little bit off of that western property line to give a little bit more separation. But at the end of the day, the only way for him to maintain that side of the structure as it exists is to come onto the subject property. When you consider the roof overhangs from his structure, you're 3 inches, 4 inches off of the common property line.
Okay, that's my analysis also. Thank you for that answer.
And just to interject to speed this along, once again, you know, for all intents and purposes, if the consensus is to remove the trees as it pertains to Mr. Baumgarten's residence on Lot 4 for the duration of his residence, and don't pick up the screening from there, we're amenable to whatever the board or the consensus is amongst the public as it impacts Mr. Baumgarten on the other lot. So however anyone sees it is fine with us.
Thank you, Mr. Suntory. Please proceed, Mr. Baumgartner.
Okay, I heard the comment earlier about a damaged street tree. Could you identify which street tree that is? Is that to the south of the curb cut or to the north of the curb cut?
I am not certain. When I visited the property, I did not take inventory of the existing trees, so I'm not certain which tree it is.
This is Donna. Warner, it's the easterly street tree.
So, okay. Oh, easterly. Yeah, I'm looking at the diagram backward, sideways. Yeah. Okay. The east of the curb cut.
East of the driveway, correct.
Okay. Now back to my question. My question would be, would the applicant be amenable to removing that damaged tree and taking the additional required apron space instead of from the west side, from the east side? There seems to be an awkward curve in that driveway. There's like a little S bend in the driveway. Would you accept that having the driveway come straight out to the street would be advisable?
Well, we still have a little bit of a jog, just because, again, you want to make sure that the driveway is sort of away from the common property line to make sure you don't have any encroachment with the concrete apron across a projection of the side property line. As I think Ms. Mullins pointed out, either we need to replace the tree, which my guess is we will replace the tree in kind, so there would still be a tree in that same general vicinity of where the existing tree is now. It would just be replaced with a healthy tree. But from a usability standpoint, the jog in the driveway doesn't really impact the access or ingress or egress. But if the board wanted us to straighten it out slightly more, that would be fine with us.
Thank you. That would probably be advisable. The parking in the rear, the discussion about the turning movements is of interest to me. Was any analysis done by limiting the parking to back-in parking? Does that alleviate or help the situation back there by mandating that people can only back into the spaces?
We did not do an analysis of that, and it's essentially sort of that would be an unenforceable restriction. Again, residents are going to do what's ever easier. If they can access their spots from pulling in head first, they're going to pull in head first. We certainly could perform that truck turning or that movement analysis, but I just don't think again, I think the parking lot as it's laid out functionally works. And I think any restriction that would require residents to back in it wouldn't be enforceable.
You had mentioned the ownership standards here. Is this going to be a condominium with a common area?
No, this is going to be privately owned.
So who owns the parking spaces then?
He can't answer that question. He's not, he's an engineer. Ask him engineering details. That's title issues.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jack.
Okay.
Did you consider reducing the overall bulk, the size of the building to create a larger parking area?
So the building that you're looking at is actually slightly smaller than the last iteration, and that was done to give us more room for the parking area. As I indicated, the 4 southern parking spaces are 8.5 feet wide, and because of the reduction in the building size, we were able to take that northernmost parking space and make it 10.5 foot wide parking space. So we did just that to ensure we have adequate room for maneuverability from the site.
Okay. Regarding the lighting, I saw graphics of the actual light fixtures on your lighting sheet there.
Sure.
Would you bring those up? Over there to the right. Yeah, you've got A, B, and C. The A, I think you testified, would be at the rear of the property facing the parking lot, correct?
Right, so the A is a light that is on the rear of the building, the southern side of the building facing the parking lot. You're correct. The B, the B are the lights on the eastern and northern side of the proposed building that vary between 8 foot and what will be 16 feet in height. And then the C lights are bollard lights that are proposed around the parking. They're low level lights, just to provide a little bit of additional illumination around the parking area.
Okay. So just to reiterate some earlier questions and testimony, your photometric here, your lighting diagram, is essentially lighting at grade. on the ground, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Are you aware that the biggest problem with lighting is glare from direct view of the light source?
Sure, and that's why, and I guess the question was regarding light A, which is sort of a floodlight wall pack, which we will sort of eliminate to prevent any sort of glare from the light source itself. It'll be a more full cutoff style fixture that instead of throwing it out, throws it down and out. So primarily it throws it down, and in all likelihood, it will require us to add some additional, maybe light, some bollard lights to ensure we have adequate illumination. But yes, we will be revising the lighting to address that.
Okay. With regard to fixture B, the same commitment with the fixture B?
Yeah, so fixture B is a more cutoff style fixture. It has guard options, but again, we can propose something that is more significantly a cutoff style fixture than what we're currently proposing. It's not an issue.
Okay, full cutoff, fully shielded, such that the light source is not visible at all.
Well, again, I mean, you're going to have a light that is 17 feet or 16 feet off the ground. So there is the ability that if you look directly at the light, you will see it, but there is an angle that at which the light throws. But again, it will be a full cutoff style fixture.
The ones you just referred to, about 16 or 17 feet off the ground, they're actually in the second floor porches, the second floor decks, correct?
Correct. One is on the 8-foot light is on the porch, the first level porch. The 17-foot or what will be 16 feet light is on the second level deck.
Okay. You're aware that they make lights that wash the wall, that actually point at the wall. So no matter where you're located, you don't see the source of the light at all. You aware of that?
So the goal would be to reflect the light off the building to illuminate the deck?
Exactly.
Again, I don't believe that this will cause any light spillage, and especially when we consider the changes that we're making. My only concern I don't want to shine the light directly into the second story, slider. So again, I think when we make the lighting revisions, especially when we consider the cutoff fixtures, I think any concern related to spillage will be addressed.
Okay, spillage and glare, hopefully, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me just look at my notes here a second. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. Irina, can you please call our next public questioner?
Yes, I have Peter Connolly. Peter, go ahead and speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Connolly, you're coming in a little broken up. Can you try again?
Mr. Connolly, 710 4th Avenue. Can you hear me okay?
No. Is everyone else having the same trouble?
Sounds like he's on a speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can switch.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you. Again, Peter Connolly, 710 4th Avenue. So just a clarification question. You've talked a lot about the runoff from the structure, but I don't know if I missed where you spoke about the runoff from the parking lot itself.
Sure. So the runoff from the parking lot, so the parking lot and the driveway is fully surrounded by full height curb. So it's curbed at 6 inches elevated above the driveway. That will sort of act as a barrier. So the driveway and the parking area will slope towards 4th Avenue, and all the runoff from that area will go into 4th Avenue, where it will flow along the curb until it gets captured by on-site or inlets in the roadway.
Helpful, thank you. And then, well, I myself do not have a driveway, so I would love to have a lighted parking lot. Was there any consideration to just reduce the number of spaces since it's a 3-family house? But I guess I just don't quite get the logic behind 5 spaces for a 3-family unit.
So that is what the ordinance requires for a multifamily unit of two or more units.
Fair
Or two
enough.
bedrooms, excuse me. Each unit requires 1.5 parking spaces, so we're required to have 4.5. So we're proposing 5 to be consistent with the ordinance.
I love that it requires 4.5. That's like a mini car, like a smart car. All right, and then my final question. This is again just a clarification. That full moon lighting spread, is that full moon? Is that half moon? Is that harvest moon?
No,
I don't know what you mean when you say a moon. You know,
right? So
average moon.
An average. So on any given night, a full moon would obviously create a greater illumination, but on an average night, a half moon or so, when you go out to when you go outside, that sort of ambient lighting that it's creating is what we're sort of proposing at the individual property lines. What I will state is, I've certainly heard from yourself and the other neighbors in this area, we're going to end up by the revised lighting analysis that we're going to do. The light levels at the property line are going to be decreased further to where if they're not 0, they're 0.1 or 0.2, which is de minimis. You wouldn't even realize that there's any spillage from those lights at the property line.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Irina, please call our next questioner.
Thank you. I have Joel Cohen. Go ahead and speak, Mr. Cohen.
Hi, this is Joel Cohen from 708 4th Avenue. Mr. Wilder, can you confirm, have you done soil testing as we talk about the runoff and the water absorption?
We have not done soils testing yet, no.
Is that in the plan?
So it's required on 2 fronts. One, it's required to support the fact that the proposed building has a basement. So we need to make sure we have enough separation between the seasonal high water table and the basement slab. And then secondly, we need it for the proposed dry well. We need to confirm, again, the seasonal high water table, but also the permeability of the soil, how fast the water goes through it. So as any condition of approval based on the conversations we're having, we would need to provide that soils testing information.
Okay, thank you very much. That's of most importance to us because every one of us on that side of the street has experienced flooded basements over the past 5 to 10 years. Regarding the 10% storm occurrence, I guess you said it was 10% chance over a 10-year period that a major storm would occur and increase the runoff based on your study. Is that 10% based off of a shore community area, or is it based off of average? Like, I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with the study.
Right, so the NOAA, and I forget what the designation stands for, but it's the oceanic, they issued an update for New Jersey rainfall data. Analysis is done on a county by county basis. So they have a 2-year storm, a 10-year storm, a 100-year storm intensity based on if you're in Bergen County, Ocean County, Monmouth County. So when I'm talking about the 10-year storm event, again, on average, this storm would occur once every 10 years based on the intensity. But that information is on a county by county basis, not town by town or anything like that.
Okay. And do you think that, I mean, Monmouth County is a pretty large county, and I think being close to the ocean may impact our water runoff a bit differently. So I don't know. Do you feel that study is appropriate?
Yeah. So realistically, not so much dependent, like the area of the state that you're in. Well, if you're in a flood zone, obviously that's one thing. But the fact of where Asbury Park is located, what you would expect to see due to its location would be limitations associated with the soils. So groundwater might be high, permeability might be low. So the design itself would take that into consideration. Relative to the design storm, what I can say is for a typical single family home, typically what we see is that they want it designed for the 2-year or for a 2-inch rainfall event. Every municipality is a little bit different. Just for this board edification, a 10-year storm is slightly less than 6 inches per hour of rain, or 6 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. So it is a significant amount of runoff and rainfall. So again, when I initially sized it, I decided to completely detain the 2-year storm. I quickly realized from dialogue with this board that that would not be enough. So I think we can certainly decide it for the 10-year storm. And I believe it's appropriate for the area.
And pardon my ignorance, but is Asbury considered a flood zone or no?
Parts of Asbury are.
Is 4th Avenue?
This property is not located within a flood zone.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Do you have any further questions, Mr. Cohen?
No, thank you.
All right, Irina, please call the next person.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Miss Chuck. I don't know your last name, so please state your last name. Go ahead and speak.
Yes, thank you very much. It's Chuck Haberl. I'm at 703 4th Avenue, just across the street. I had a particular question about parking now. Mr. Wilder had said that he felt that the parking that he had provided for here was appropriate, and I was wondering how he came to that conclusion.
So we are required to provide 4.5 parking spaces for the proposed development. We are providing 5, so we're compliant with the ordinance. And then based on the truck circulation that we had prepared, cars can adequately enter and exit the individual parking spaces.
Right, it's compliant with the ordinance for sure, but what I've seen you done here is basically construct a very craftily, a very dense property development. I mean, you have 9 bathrooms and 9 bedrooms, and potentially you could have 18 or more people living on this property. So I was wondering whether you felt that these 5 parking
You're commenting.
Yes,
okay.
I would object to
The
that.
question is whether that's appropriate for that number of people, whether 5 is sufficient for their needs.
Again, so we're sort of beholden to the ordinance, you know, based on the master plan and the way ordinances are adopted. Those individuals who take part in addressing the zoning ordinance for the city, they take into account the demand for individual areas and sort of what they're seeing. So we're sort of, for lack of a better term, married to what the ordinance requires, because again, that's where our design is trying to be in compliance with the ordinance in its entirety. So if you're asking, could additional cars be on site? I mean, anything is possible, but again, we're designing it in accordance with the ordinance and as it currently exists.
Do you anticipate any, perhaps any impact upon the availability of street parking for the people who might be living on this property?
Again, so we're, and as I sort of had intimated previously, you're noticing a trend towards smaller vehicles and even less of a demand for vehicular traffic. You're seeing a lot of folks do bicycle, pedestrians walking. So just based on that and the fact that the ordinance has a requirement of 1.5 spaces per unit, I believe what we're proposing is appropriate from an off-street parking standpoint.
All right, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Irina, please call the next person.
Thank you. I have caller ending in phone number 5124. Go ahead and speak.
Please state your name and address. Irina?
I'm not able to unmute them. Okay, caller number ending in 5124. Please call back. Try hanging up and calling back because we're not able to unmute you so you can speak.
All right, let's move on and then we'll come.
Yes, I'll go on to the next person. I have Jonathan Pickhart. Please go ahead and speak.
Hello.
Did we lose him, Irina?
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilder, my name is...
No, please state your name and your address.
Yes, Jonathan Pickard, 701 4th Avenue. I own one of the homes across the street from the subject property. Mr. Wilder, you referenced that there are a lot of residents who are moving away from cars and using bicycles. Was there any provision made on the site for parking of bicycles outside of the subject units?
There was not.
You also referenced the trash bins and that there's 6 trash bins. You said the private maintenance company will be handling the maintenance on the property. Is the trash collection being done by city trash collectors, or is it it sounded like it's a private trash collection company, is that right?
Correct.
Is how many times per week?
It's a function of demand. My hunch is that for development of this nature, with everyone having their own bin, it would probably be once a week.
Okay. Understanding once a week, these are units that have 3 bedrooms. What analysis, if any, have you done with respect to the adequacy of a single trash bin for a family in a 3-bedroom unit?
Again, it's a general standard for single family. Again, this is not single family, this is multifamily. But I can certainly speak to my own personal residence, which has 5 bedrooms and 2 small children. So the amount of Amazon boxes we generate is astronomical. But we're able to accommodate once a week pickup with 1 garbage bin. So I don't see any issue with once a week pickup. And the private development, the private property maintainer may opt to select twice a week, but I don't think it's necessary. I think once a week would be more than sufficient.
And your anticipation is that for the once a week pickup, that the maintenance company would remove the bins to the street, where they would then be collected?
No, I would envision that the residents themselves would be the ones who move the trash receptacles to the street. And as I apologize for, I forget which board member requested it, but we'll propose some fencing around the garbage bins, so they will be responsible for taking the bins from the fenced area to the street, and then vice versa, taking them from the street to back into the fenced area following pickup.
Would it be your anticipation that the trash and recycling will be picked up on the same day?
I'm not certain. That's a detail that certainly hasn't been worked out at this point. If they did get picked up on the same day, you would, I guess your question is, would you have 6 bins at the street?
That's correct.
You would, but again, I'm not certain if they would be picked up on the same day.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard. Irina, please call our next public questioner.
I'm just going to go back to phone number ending in 5124 because I don't see that they hung up and tried calling back. So let's try it again. And hope this works. No. Okay. So phone number ending in, oh, go ahead and speak.
Hi, this is Rita Morano. I think Werner answered all my questions, but can I make a statement or not yet?
Not yet, Rita. We're going to come to that at the end of the meeting after all the testimony.
Okay, and then I'll call back.
You can stay on. I'm just going to mute you now, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Please go on, Irina.
Sure. And I'm going to call Mr. Magnoli. Go ahead and speak. Mr. Magnoli, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Ernest Magnoli, 400 Deal Lake Drive, Asbury Park, New Jersey. So I think if I'm understanding, we're going from a 5-bedroom, 1 home, 4 bath, 8,000 square feet, to 3 units. I guess they're attached. They're classified as townhomes, correct?
So again, the definition of a townhome was only discussed as it relates to the residential site improvement standards and the need for handicap parking. As the city defines a townhome, because these only have one means of egress, they are not considered townhomes per Asbury Park.
Okay, but didn't you say there's going to be like an association management company? Doesn't that mean that somehow these three homes are, they are attached, aren't they?
They are attached. The
property. And then somehow, whatever you call them, it doesn't matter, but somehow those three owners of three bedroom, 3 bath homes attached are going to somehow join and I guess share management and services, which is okay. But what I'm wondering is
the record.
So what I'm saying is
nobody testified that it's that the 3 unit occupiers are going to be forming an association.
Yes, Mr. Serber, as counselor for the owner of the property, just to clarify, one, there is no association. This is not a condo association. There is no ownership. The units will be owned by the owner and rented. And that's really what it comes down to. And as the owner of the property, there will be certain criteria inside leases that will require certain things as any tenant would have in the entire New Jersey under a lease, and specific criteria to make sure they're conforming with ordinance. And lastly, as it pertains to, maintaining the property, the owner ultimately would be charged with maintaining the property should the tenants not adhere to the terms and conditions of the lease.
Okay. I have to apologize. I thought you were talking about selling 3 units and it would be owner occupied, but what you're saying is sort of a developer LLC is building 3 units and renting them. And they're basically 3 bedroom, 3 bath units attached. I guess the owner will maintain responsibility for the building like an association because they're going to be rented. So it
That's
looks
not
like it was
part of Mr. Wilder's testimony, Mr. Manoli.
Okay. So we went from a 5 bedroom, 4 bath, 3,000 square foot. All 3 of these.
Where does that come from? That's not in the record.
What? I'm looking at the existing structure. It says 5 bedroom, 4 bath, 3,000 square foot. I'm looking right at it.
Okay.
So what I'm asking is, you're going from 5 bedroom to 9. You're going from 4 baths to 9, and you're going from a 3,000 square foot.
That's outside the scope of Mr. Wilder's testimony, Mr. Manoli.
Well, I'm only asking. You're tearing down a building with a 3,000 square foot footing. And the reason I'm trying to ask this is because what's the footing of the new all structures going to be? That's all I'm asking. In other words, is the footing of square footage increased? And the reason I ask that, it goes to water management and storm management. And then you lose the impermeability. You lose the permeability of a paved lot.
Why don't Mr. Wilder answer the basic question that you asked about the footprint of the building, and then you can comment later.
He's no longer there.
What happened?
He's there. I muted him so you can speak.
All right. The question is, the basic question was to Mr. Wilder. He wanted to know if the footprint of the building has increased from the existing footprint of the structure that's there now.
I believe that it has. I would defer to Mr. Conditor, but I believe that the proposed footprint is slightly larger.
Okay, there's your answer.
So the answer is you're going to defer to another expert?
No, he just said he believed that it is increased.
But again, my testimony
well, can I ask the engineer from 3,000 to what footprint? Or are you going to defer that to another expert? The engineer doesn't know what the new footprint is.
Consider the building, when you consider all the covered porches, the proposed coverage of the building will be slightly over 1,900 square feet in footprint. And that is each floor, obviously.
No, sir. All I'm asking is the footprint, sir. Of all three attached structures, you went from a one-family big unit of 3,000 square foot footprint. Now, whatever you're doing is okay. I guess everybody wants to approve it. But all I'm asking is, relative to the next question, which will be stormwater management, what's the footprint going to be now? And you don't have that exact number?
Slightly over 1,900 square feet.
Per unit?
Per floor. So the building coverage on the property.
So are you saying that you're putting up 3 units that are going to take up less of a footprint than what's already there? I don't think you mean
My hunch is that I'm not sure which plan you're referring to that shows 5 bedrooms. Again, that's I don't have a plan on.
Okay.
If I may.
All right. Let me say this. Okay. The 3 structures are going to be attached. They're going to have a foundation and a basement. Can you tell me the length and width of that total? I don't want to know the floors going up or how many, just the footprint, which means on the ground.
I don't have the exact dimensions.
Just for the
You don't have the exact. What kind of meeting is this? You don't have the exact.
Mr. McNolly, I'm just going to mute you for 1 second. Someone is trying to get a word in.
Yes, Mr. Wilder, you've obviously just testified to the fact, and I think what Mr. McNolly is confused about perhaps is total square footage versus footprint. And he's asking footprint, but giving total square footage. So the bottom line is this: you testified to the question, you just testified, or in response to his question, it was a little over 1,900 square feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
There's nothing more to talk about because there's nothing more to analyze because that's the number, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McNolly, do you have another question for Mr. Wilder's testimony?
Okay, so then, according to the 2 experts now, they're telling me that you're going from 3,000 square foot footprint to 1,900. I'm okay with that. So you're building a smaller footprint.
First of all, for the record, that wasn't testified to. No one testified to the existing footprint. Mr. Wilder has testified to what the proposed footprint was in response to your question. So there is nothing of the record other than whatever you may be reading from, which may be a total square footage of the property as it pertains to 2 floors.
Sustained, Mr. Santori.
I have no idea. I'm looking right at the tax record and the thing. It says it's a 3,000 square foot building, 5 bedrooms, 4 baths.
Please ask a question. Mr. Manoli, please ask a question.
I don't know why you keep muting me. But anyway, so we'll move on. You're telling me that the new footprint is 1,900 square feet, and I'm going to accept that. Okay. So now, moving to the parking lot. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at the backyard now. I have pictures of the whole property. It's a beautiful, permeable lawn with 1 big tree.
Testifying. Get to the questions.
Okay. The question is, you're going to be paving that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm sorry?
That's correct.
No, that's not correct.
Not correct, Mr. Wilder. The backyard he's talking about.
He asked you about the backyard and the parking area. You testified that it's going to be in.
It's going to be the parking area will be pavers.
Right.
Pavers.
Correct.
Okay. Are you saying that they're going to be permeable to the water?
They will not be, as the DEP defines them, as porous pavers or permeable pavers.
Okay. So here's my technical question. We see that it's a dirt lot. When it rains, it gets sucked into that ground. You're going to put less than permeable surface, pavers, call them whatever you want. Did you come up with a percentage of how much of that large area, that parking lot, is going to have downpours, which could be substantial, is now taken away with semi-permeable? Is that what you're proposing? Semi-permeable, meaning certain percentage of the water is going to go through the pavers, or it's not?
For all intents and purposes, I am treating the pavers the same way as I would treat asphalt.
Okay. So the 5 parking spots, or is it 6? 5?
5.
in the back are going to have a built-up curb around it to prevent the water from going to the neighbors. It's going to go from completely permeable dirt and grass to non-permeable, impermeable pavers for the parking lot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Are you saying now that you're going to pitch that towards Fourth? Because I'm looking right at it right now. It's pitched towards the neighbors. Are you going to site develop so that it pitches to Fourth? Because otherwise, how's the water going to get out of that lot?
Ernest, did
What?
you hear his testimony, all of his testimony?
Yeah, I did. I've been patiently listening.
Oh, okay.
So he said about a built-up curb around the perimeter. Now he's talking about non-permeable surface, 5 parking spaces, which all sounds great. All I'm asking is, where's that water going?
Didn't
And what's
you
going
hear
to bring
him
it?
testify? Didn't you listen?
I did hear.
And he addressed that 2 or 3 times.
Okay, except for one thing.
No,
When he
no.
was at,
Ask your question. Just not. I don't want to discuss
okay,
it. Ask your
okay,
question. Ask your question.
okay. Were you ever to the property during flooding?
I've not visited the property during a flooding event.
Oh, great. So that really qualifies you to take away probably 1,000. What is this lot in square feet?
7,500
Very
square.
good. 3,500 square feet of permeable to become impermeable, and you're not worried about where that's water going. Why don't you just put drains in there and attach it to the city sewer?
Mr. McNolly, please ask a question.
That is a question.
That's not a question.
Can you put drains in that back lot and run a pipe to the city sewer, which would take care of the whole problem? Can you, or would you, or can you? I don't know how to ask it as a question.
So again, we're not proposing drains due to the grading design. The way the grading design is done, everything pitches from west to east and from south to north. So all the runoff from the parking area and the driveway is going directly into 4th Ave, where it travels along the gutter then into the storm sewer. In my opinion, having a direct connection via pipe to a storm inlet, it's the exact same thing that we're proposing currently. If you're telling me that some of the storm inlets in 4th Ave flood currently, whether we send runoff via overland flow or a direct connection, that wouldn't mitigate or alleviate any of a flooding issue. So again, the design as it's constituted sends all the runoff from the parking area and the driveway into 4th Ave to be captured by inlets in 4th Ave.
Are you aware that if you sink drains into the lot and the pipe runs underneath the property to the sewer, it doesn't have to be above ground and flow into the inlets in the curb on the street. It's done underground, peacefully and quietly. Well, why would you compare one method which is foolproof? Sink drains in the lot. Now that's impermeable. The water will go down the drains through a pipe from the back of the property to the front and hook up to the sewer line where the inlets go into. What you're proposing is to put an area where people have already testified, neighbors, that area floods. And now what you're saying is we're going to take away 3,500 square feet of permeability and just let the water run out.
This isn't a question. You're testifying. You're offering an opinion.
Okay.
You got to cross-examine him. Ask him questions based on his testimony.
Okay. Did you do a study of 3,500 foot of impermeability now and what impact it's going to have on the testimony of lots of owners there who say it floods now with 3,500, and that's not the footprint of the building, which I don't believe is 1,900 square feet, but let's just say you testified that's going to be a small building footprint, but 3,500 lot from a nice grass thing that absorbs water and it goes into the water tables to impermeable. So my question is, why can't you just do it, I don't want to say the right way, but the prudent way, to protect the neighbors, to make it integral, and not to be dumping water in the street, which is already overburdened by testimony of all the neighbors. It floods.
First of all, for the record, there's been no testimony whatsoever at this point in time by any neighbors because it hasn't been opened up for testimony for them. It's just been cross-examination.
Okay, in cross-examination. They said, I live there and it floods. That's not credible? And then they asked, were you there? And your engineer says, no, I was never there. So it leads me to believe, wouldn't the neighbors know more about what floods and doesn't than the engineer who admits he's never been there? So it's
Mr. Manoli, do you have a question for Ms.
I do. I'm not all over the place. Let me ask. Okay. Will you consider putting in a drain in the parking lot to accommodate the offset of no more permeability of 3,500 square feet, which is a lot of square 100 feet. That's what, 30 by what, 100?
That's your question. Answer the question.
Right. So
him or me?
Oh, him. You
okay,
asked me to consider it.
Oh, good.
The reason we are not considering drains that tie into inlets within 4th Ave is that the inlets in 4th Ave are not in the immediate vicinity of the site. So
what inlets?
Again, I'm not sure of the exact distance. But
sir, are you talking about in the street, the sewer grate that the water goes in? I'm not talking about that. That connects to a sewer pipe in the ground. If you put drainage in that back lot, you dig down in the ground, you come out with a pipe that gathers all that water in a pipe that goes right to the below ground sewer line that the above ground sewers drain into. In other words, that's the prudent way. That's the foolproof way. That water will never have to see anything except the sewer pipe, probably 8 feet below ground.
And this is a question?
It is a question. Would you consider it?
It sounds like it's testimony. You're telling him how to engineer the project.
Oh, well, why not? I'm asking him, would you consider
can't do that now. You can offer that as an opinion later on once you're qualified as an engineer.
Once who's qualified?
Right now, you got to ask him questions about his testimony.
Okay. He said that in his opinion.
No, don't tell me what he said. You're testifying. You're offering an opinion. Ask questions based on his testimony.
Let me move on, because when Mr. Serpico, you get like this.
Excuse me. Mute him. I'm not going to argue with him. He either asks questions or he waits till he gives his comments. I'm not going to have a discussion with him.
Mr. Magnoli, I'm going to try unmuting you again. If you have a direct question for Mr. Wilder, please go ahead.
Okay. So, okay, I don't have any. So in other words, your plan is to dig a hole somewhere, is that correct? To catch some water? Dry well.
We are proposing a dry well for the roof runoff from the new structure. The driveway and the parking area will direct runoff via overland flow into 4th Avenue.
And I know, I'm going to ask you, do you know the roof surface versus the existing roof surface?
I do not know the footprint of the existing home, but based on your test,
I didn't say footprint. I said roof print.
I don't know off the top of my head the square footage of the existing home's footprint.
And again, that was not his testimony, Mr. Manoli.
I don't care. I give up. If he can't answer questions, I give up. I'll wait till the comment section. I never heard this. An engineer doesn't.
Thank you, Mr. Magnoli. And I have one more person, Mr. Gerard Bohm. Please go ahead and speak. Oh, okay. Mr. Bohm, it's saying that you're using an older version of Zoom. I'm going to have to promote you to a panelist just so you can ask a question, and then we're going to have to take you back off. Go ahead and speak. Let's see if this works. Mr. Bohm, are you there?
Can you contact him, Irina?
I cannot. I don't have a contact for him. He is on a computer. Mr. Bohm, you're using an old version of Zoom. You will have to get off and either get a new version of Zoom or use it through your browser. Please do not use the current version you're on. You can also call into the meeting. Hold on one second and I'll provide you with the phone number. Sorry, everyone, just bear with me for one moment. Mr. Bohm, are you able to see, oh, sorry. Are you able to see what's on the screen right now? Please call the phone numbers 929-205-6099. And then you will enter this meeting ID. I'm going to leave that up on the screen for a second and we're going to answer Mr. Cohen's question. Mr. Cohen, you've already asked your questions. We're not allowing a second round of questions. I'm sorry.
It's a separate issue that I did not raise, and that no one has raised, if you don't mind.
Mr. Avalone?
I'm hesitant to, Mr. Cohen, is it a quick question?
I will make it super quick.
Okay. I can't offer this to everyone. So it will be a very quick question at a one-time basis. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wilder, did you inspect the fence that you had stated it was in good shape and you would just be moving it?
Yeah, so I had taken a look at the property when I walked it, as well as the photographs that were taken of the property when my survey field crew conducted the on-site survey.
And you felt that the fence was in good shape standing as it is, and also good enough shape to pick up and move, as you stated?
That's the question. If when the fence is being relocated, if panels are damaged, they would need to be replaced. It seemed in good enough condition for relocation. If it turns out that during relocation they're damaged, they would have to be replaced.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Irina, do we have Mr. Bohm?
Let's check. No, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised that has called in again. Mr. Bohm, if you were able to call in using that phone number, you have to dial *9 on your telephone keypad in order to raise your hand. Let's give him a second to see if he'll do that. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I am showing phone number ending in 4143. Is that you, Mr. Bohm? Go ahead and speak. Phone number ending in 4143.
Mr. Bohm, are you there? Irina.
Mr. Bohm? No, it's not working.
Okay.
Mr. Bohm?
Am I there now?
Oh, yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, thank goodness. In reference to trash collection, you mentioned 6 bins of garbage cans in the backyard. And first of all, for the record, city trash collection at the street is twice a week, Tuesday and Fridays. So I ask you, are they going to be, the tenants are going to be putting their trash cans out on the street? And are they going to be, how are they going to bring them back? Is it just going to be whenever they feel like bringing the cans back into the house, or is it going to be they're all week laying around out in the street? Plus the fact that they'll be subject to animals attacking the trash cans, which do that quite regularly now.
So like, sure. So like any other residential use, they'll take the bins to the street, and then following pickup, they'll take the bins from the street and put them back in the fenced off enclosure that we're going to add to the rear of the structure.
Is that a guarantee? Will they do that? What if they don't do it?
Again, so it does, as Mr. Santori had indicated, that, you know, the property owner would then become responsible for certain elements of if the site was left in disrepair, or if trash bins were left on the site on the street for 3, 4, 5 days. Property owner would be subject to advising the homeowners to move the bins or move the bins themselves. So like any other home, like any other resident, and again, you know, they're going to probably need the trash bins to following trash pickup. So I don't see any reason they would leave them at the street.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Mr. Bohm?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Irina,
you. Yes,
anybody
I have
else?
one last person, Lauren Scheller. Go ahead and speak.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Lauren Scheller. I'm at 708 4th Ave. I have a question for Mr. Wilder. I wanted to know if he has plans to visit the lot during or shortly after a significant rainfall.
I could certainly visit the property. The short answer is if flooding currently exists, the flooding is not caused by this subject property. So there's really no way for us to sort of mitigate it or eliminate the flooding issues. What we're trying to do by the grading design and the stormwater design is reduce the impact to adjacent properties and get water to the street to get it off of the property so it doesn't go onto adjacent properties.
Okay, last question. With all the significant changes that need to be made, the costly and significant timely changes or time-consuming changes, did you ever make a recommendation to the owner/developer that it was too high of a density for that property?
Did I indicate to the developer that the density was too high?
Yes, given all of the significant work that needs to be done to make this all fit on that property.
I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Ms. Scheller?
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Avalone. I don't show any other hands raised.
All right, so that concludes the questioning of Mr. Wilder. And I believe, Mr. Santori, you still have several witnesses to go ahead yet. I think this is a good time for us to break and move on. I think, you know, it's already 9:30 and we will not finish this tonight.
I guess my only question would be, with the board's patience and a little bit of time, obviously the amount of time being taken up by some of the residents' questions, which obviously they have the right to do, but have been fairly similar in nature for the last nearly 1 hour. I just would like the opportunity at least to get Mr. Contador's just something to keep going.
It will go way beyond 10 o'clock. I'm afraid there's just no way, Mr. Santori, that we're going to complete Mr. Condatori's question and answer period, nor our questioning on the board. It would just go past 10 o'clock. And I think at that point, you lose most of the attention of each of the board members as well as the public.
I do understand and appreciate that, but can we at least get his direct testimony? I can only imagine we have about 15 minutes.
I'm sorry, no.
Okay. It is what it is. So when are we back on for?
Irina.
So, Mr. Santori, we can offer you that same date, which is October 13th, but you will be second on the agenda for that date. Alternatively, we have the next meeting in October, which is October 27th.
Well, I guess my question is this: if the board doesn't have a penchant to go to 10 o'clock, and the other meeting's a D variance, correct? From what I heard earlier on, right? That was a D variance.
Yes, that's correct, but they are coming back for only one testimonial.
So there's only
And
one.
we can limit them to an hour or so.
Yes.
Okay, so
If
then
we
at
have-
that
when we have
time-
multiple applications, typically applicants only get an hour.
Simple enough. No, I just want to make sure that we don't convene all the experts to, pay them to sit for and to get 30 minutes in. That's all. So yes, I mean, I would love then to become, just to keep it moving, and maybe we can get one witness in that point, but it sounds like we'll be back on the 28th from the way things have been moving. So I think if we could do that, that would be great.
So you would like to take October 27th, is that correct?
No, I want to continue on the
13th.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
All
other
right.
one's limited, and we can get at least in Mr. Contador through, and then we can hopefully finish things up on the 28th, 7th, whatever.
Okay.
And Mr. Serpico, is there any time constraints that he would need to?
Yeah, we need a waiver of any time constraints within which to act under the MLUL.
Not a problem. I'll put something out tomorrow for you.
That's fine, as long as it's on the record and send something to Irina. And motion, if there's a motion to carry, certainly should be without additional notices.
Thank you.
And I'll make a motion to carry the 704 4th Avenue, 13 Grand Point Way LLC to October 13th, 2020 without further notice.
Thank you so much.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion by Christopher Avalone and a second by Brittany Ashman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Application carried to October 13th, 2020 without further notice.
Thank you, Mr. Centauri.
So much, everybody, for your time and attention. And we know there's a lot of stuff to go through. So thank you for your focus.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
And I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, Dan, seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Harris. I have a motion by Christopher Avalone, second by Dan Harris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And meeting adjourned.
Thank
Our
you,
next
everybody.
meeting- Our next meeting will be on September 22nd. And everyone that was here for this application, please join us again on October 13th. Thank you and good night, everyone.